through 23.
But the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and a distressing spirit of the Lord accompanied him. And Saul's servant said to him, surely a distressing spirit from God is troubling me. Let our master now command your servants, well, before you seek out a man who is a skillful player of the harp. And it shall be that he will play it with his hand when the distressing spirit from God is upon you, and you shall be well. So Saul said to his servants, provide me now a man who can play well, and bring him to me. Then one of the servants answered and said, look, I have seen a son of Jesse, a Bethlehemite, who is skillful in playing, a mighty man of valor, a man of war, prudent in speech, and a handsome person, and the Lord is with him. Therefore Saul sent messengers to Jesse, and said, send me your son David, who is with the sheep. And Jesse took a donkey loaded with bread, a skin of wine, and a young goat, and sent them by his son David to Saul. So David came to Saul and stood before him, and he loved him greatly, and he became his armor bearer. Then Saul sent to Jesse, saying, please let David stand before me, for he has found favor in my sight. And so it was, whenever the Spirit of God was upon Saul, that David would take a harp and play with his hand. Then Saul would become refreshed and well, and the distressing spirit would depart from him.
All right, great. Last week you guys looked at the rest of 16:1 through 13, which are questions 1 through 9. The things that happened to David post all his 7 brothers going in front of Samuel and them not being chosen. Samuel asking if there's any more. Jesse saying he has one younger one. The younger one was David, and that's the one that God had chosen. What was the sign visually to show that God had chosen David from verses 11 through 13? How did Samuel know that God chose David and not the other one? Right, so verse 12, he said, now he had brought him in, he was ruddy, bright eyes, and good looking, and the Lord said, arise, anoint him, for this is the one. Then Samuel took the horn of oil, anointed him in the midst of his brothers, and the Spirit of the Lord came upon David from that day. So Samuel arose and went to Ramah. Then on flip, or contrast to that, verse 14, the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and a distressing spirit from the Lord troubled him. All right, question 10. What happened to Saul, right? Because we're moving quickly in terms of geography, but not time. 1 through 13, this is Samuel meeting with Jesse and his sons. And then 14 through 23, we're back to wherever King Saul was. So question 10 is, what happened to Saul while all of this was transpiring with what was happening with David? What happened to King Saul?
He was being tormented by an evil spirit because the Spirit of the Lord had left him. But in answer to that, if you can go into this a little bit for me, it says an evil spirit from the Lord tormented him, and that's just a little confusing to me. So that an evil spirit from the Lord would go on him. I figured the Spirit of the Lord leaves, so some other type of spirit would probably come on him. But it says an evil spirit from the Lord. So if you can,
sure. Yeah, let's turn to 2 scriptures. One is Judges 9:23. Judges 9:23. And then just keep your finger there and do Judges 16:20. We'll look at both Judges 9:23 and Judges 16:20. So whoever has Judges 9:23, who wouldn't mind just reading 22 and 23.
One of the things that I had to read in Hebrew is that God said that this would be true,
and let's do Judges 16:20.
And she said, The Philistines are upon you, Samson. So he awoke from his sleep and said, I will go out as before at other times and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had departed from him.
Yep. So there's a parallel in terms of our Christianity understanding where Jesus is talking about cleaning a house. And when you clean a house, if you leave the door open and then the spirits come in, will make it dirtier or worse than when it was before. That's what this is talking about in terms of 1 Samuel 16:14. Another good understanding for this is the whole back and forth between Job, right? So Job, the whole concept of Job, before you even get to know anything about Job, the setting is actually in heaven, which is very strange for our understanding, because if you read the Bible in order in terms of its organization in Genesis, by the time you get to Job, your understanding of where the devil is as a serpent on earth. But in Job, it's talking about the devil somehow having the ability to go back and forth between earth and between where God is. Right? And in Job, it's talking, and God asked, what have you been up to? And the devil's response was just basically what First Peter talks about, going back and forth on earth like a roaring lion, seeking whom I may devour. Right? That was the concept. And then God said, have you considered my servant Job? Right? The devil said, sure, I considered him, because God said there's no one like him out on earth. The reason why there's no one like him is because you have a hedge of protection around him. Therefore, the people that I've been freely doing whatever I want with, you haven't allowed me to do those things with him. If you let me do what I've been doing to others to him, the devil says, surely he'll curse your name. And then God's response was, okay, you can interact with him and trouble him, but just don't do what at first, God said in Job. Right? Like you can't take his life. So this concept of this balance, this war between God and Satan is something that we don't talk about too much, right? We mostly talk about our interactions here on earth and like the things that we're going through and those sort of things. It's hard for us, I think, to conceptualize or visualize a spiritual warfare going on between the forces of good and the forces of evil. Then you have modern times where people will distort this forces of evil side to a whole nother level, where it is you can't have any control over yourself. There was a famous show, I think in the 50s or the 60s, where the response of anything that was ever wrong was, the devil made me do, right? So we have to balance that Job concept with what James says. And James said that God can't tempt people with evil, because where does the temptation come from? Your own self, your own desires. Each one of us has desires. And when we're presented with that opportunity, you may be presented with the same opportunity with me, but because your desires are different from mine, you may not indulge in that specific sin. You may be indulging in something else, right? That's the balance. So when we look at this in terms of spirit, when God's presence is removed from any situation, evil is going to come, right? That's the whole concept of when God entered in this world and the angel said, you're going to call him Emmanuel, which is God with us. That disrupted Satan's plan, because for the first time since the Garden of Eden, God was on earth and he stayed there for a long period of time. So therefore the balance was off, right? Because Satan's playground was earth, right? His dominion, his power, the angels that fall that we know as demons, they were doing whatever they wanted to do, right? Even when Jesus would interact with some of them, they would say, what? I know who you are, right? But it's not our time. Just send us over here instead of casting us out, right? That balance. When we look at things in terms of our Christianity, we have to understand that evil is there, the opportunity is there. But I think what Jesus was trying to get people to see, and what the New Testament tries to get us to see, is something that people don't want to admit to, that evil come really from inside of you. That's what I'm saying. Nowadays it's easy because people will say, well, a spirit did this to me. I don't know, right? People in court say that, don't they? Oh, I don't remember. Well, I blacked out and I did this thing. And that's a court defense. And we have to decide, if you are sane or not sane. Can you stand trial? Did something happen to you, right? This is a concept that even in our legal system that people have. When you start talking about from a spiritual standpoint, we got to always start from this concept of Job and move throughout to know that without the presence of God, you have evil. And God removing his spirit, even when we look at another situation I should have flagged before was Pharaoh, right? When it looked at Pharaoh and God was doing amazing things through Moses, sometimes the Bible said, what happened to Pharaoh's heart? Who hardened it? God hardened Pharaoh's heart, right? When we look in the New Testament where it said, oh, Judas was raised for the purpose that he served, which was what? To portray Jesus. Those things seem harsh, but you got to understand also that those are concepts that are coming outside of time, meaning God already knows the hearts of men and women. Therefore, if he mentions that he's allowing something to happen, there are things that we know are already brewing inside of him. James makes that clearer in the New Testament than it does in the Old Testament. How we know that specifically for Saul was already inside out, not the best version of himself. We have flagged that so many weeks already, right? So these things that are in him are already there. Same thing with Pharaoh, right? Pharaoh's interaction with God's people, that specific Pharaoh, was way different than the other Pharaohs. Right? That was the whole point. He was the one who was looking out and saying, this looked like a free labor source. And then it said they forgot Joseph. So then he moved his heart away from the Israelite nation and more into a dictatorship. So it's a good question because it's something that we have to look at as Bible students as a balance, not just as a snapshot. If you just look at it as a snapshot, it may have the appearance that poor Saul had nothing to do with his actions. He was sitting there minding his business. God's spirit left him and God put an evil spirit inside of him. And then he just started foaming at the mouth and got depressed and was so sad that nothing could cure him. And he needed somebody to sing him a song, right? These sort of things, when we look at it in terms of totality or a balance, are things that we have to understand happen freely, right? Like even this concept of being depressed, because real depression is you can go from an emotional high to an emotional low, even though nothing changed in your physical setting. I feel like nowadays people use depressed too easy, right? Depression is a real thing. You can lose your job and it could cause you to be depressed, but depression and sadness is not the same thing. We all would be sad if we lose our job. Depression would be you in the middle of a concert and a second ago you were happy and now you're sad. Why are you sad? That's depression. Again, when people throw words out, words matter. Nowadays, people just label anything to anything. Like, oh, I need some medicine. Let me go to the doctor and say, oh, I have anxiety. What are you anxious about? Oh, everything. I'm anxious even telling you I'm anxious. I need a prescription. And then doctor write a prescription, right? Like there's certain things that come from chemical imbalances and there's certain things that society just move toward. Same thing happens with spiritual realm, right? There are certain things that are about a balance of good and evil, and there are certain societies that discount the evil and only want to talk about the good, and there are certain societies that don't discount the good but heighten the evil, right? The balance at the end of the day is you have free will to do anything you want to do in this world. The asterisk to that is two things. Your free will never supersede God's divine will. That's the first thing. And the second thing is there will always be consequences for the choices you make. Not your race, not your gender, not where you were born, not how much money you have, not how you were raised. Those may be factors in why you act the way you act. But at the end of the day, God isn't judging off of external factors. He's judging off of your internal personage. And the choices you make in this life, God said, will dictate where you end up for eternity. So that's a concept that this modern world we live in, people don't like to focus on that because that puts the burden on me that I have to admit that, hey, I did wrong. But it is a balance, right? God is admitting that, yes, when his presence is gone or if he allows things to happen, evil would run rampant. Even in the Garden of Eden, if we start there, God did allow evil to enter the garden, right? He could have said, no, don't enter here. So he still allowed evil to enter there. Some people, that's a deal breaker, right? They feel like if God was so loving, why did he allow Adam and Eve to even interact with the devil, right? God allows evil to exist amongst human beings so that each person have the free will to do whatever they want to do, right? Adam and Eve had dominion over animals. They could have interacted with that serpent and still not eat. They wanted to eat that fruit the whole time. And we look at this concept with them wanting a king. What was God telling Samuel? They really want to worship other gods. They've been wanting to do that since I showed them. This is just the way that they're going to do it, by saying we want to be like everyone else with the king. But when they want to be like everyone else, they want to be like everyone else worshiping God. Now, did we see that from any of their actions yet? No, unless God told us that in scripture, how would we have known that? That's the whole point. God is judging, like he's telling Samuel, I'm judging from the inside, right? I already know how people are going to be from the inside. That's why I personally in recent years talk more about discernment and character, right? We have to do better with discerning someone's character. Don't mean that we hate them, but some people have bad character traits inside of them. Even sometimes their parents didn't raise them that way. You can meet two people and the parents are wonderful and the kid is rotten. He or she is. You don't call them rotten because you birthed them. But the rest of the world, we say what? That kid is annoying. Who raised you? Then you meet the parents and you think, were you adopted? Where did you come from? You know how that's the case? Because I have free will to do whatever I want. I can walk out the house and do anything I want to do. Who's going to stop me? That's how life is. So when we look at those things in terms of interacting with one another, now we see a glimpse of God's point of view. Said, yes, that's why when people were asking Jesus, hey, who sinned? The parents? What did Jesus say? It don't work that way, right? Sins of the kids can't go on to the parents, and sins of the parents can't go on to the kids, because each person have to make decision for themselves, an action, word, or deed. Jesus said, whatever come out of a man's mouth, that's what defiles him, right? Not his situation or his circumstance. So it's a good question. It's just something that in a snapshot is confusing. In totality, as a recap, we know that in the absence of God, evil will abound, right? We know that when Jesus died, physical things start happening to the world, right? It was earthquakes and it just got dark. And without the presence of God, everything is going to crumble. But we also know two balances, which is Job and which is James. Inside of us, we are all tempted differently, but God does allow temptation to exist. He doesn't tempt you, but he allows it to exist. And the method in which it exists is through Satan, and Satan has angels who have fallen, people who have stopped following God's will, doing what he wants to do, or what we can call fallen angels, and those are demonic forces, right? The demons, right? And that back and forth, that dichotomy between good and evil, is a warfare that exists outside of our understanding. Is it as much as people are saying that all of a sudden something can happen and there's no explanation? No. Is it as much as other people are saying that it doesn't exist? No, it's a balance. There are certain things that you're not privy to because it has nothing to do with your knowledge or understanding of getting to heaven through salvation. It's about balance. That's why I think the New Testament doesn't spend as much as talking about demons than it does salvation, because the knowledge of demons will not get you to heaven, right? The knowledge of or indulging in evil forces won't get you to heaven, right? Because Paul said, even if you talk in angel language and you don't have what? Nothing. Love, right? Love is the basis for God so loved the world. See what I'm saying? People can go to the extremes on both sides. But in church, we do a disservice if we go to the other side and pretend like these evil things don't exist, because evil does exist in the world systematically, meaning God allowed beings to choose evil and he didn't destroy them in their choice. He allowed it to continue on for a greater divine purpose, right? That purpose is each person has free will to do whatever they want to do. And those things are confusing to some of us in this realm. But God's point is, I'm going to let both exist. Parable of the wheat and the tares is a good example of that. And at the end, I will decide and decipher through who was doing this and who was doing that. not in the middle. Sometimes I will go in and clean things up, but vengeance is mine, says the Lord, not you, because you don't know how to do eye for an eye. Only I can do that, right? Only I can administer real divine justice. So you love people, pray for them, love your enemies, turn the other cheek, and I will avenge those who are wrong, right? That's the biblical understanding of it, yes.
And I think on a higher level of learning, spiritual learning, in this case, we have to study that there is no void in existence for you and I. Either you have the Spirit of God or you have the spirit of Satan. God has to let that darkness come back, but he has to get permission first. So God knows when the heart turns from him. Saul had reached that point where God said, I'm no longer dealing with the soul. So when God moves out, he gives permission for that evilness to exist, because there's no in between. Humanity doesn't exist between God and Satan. So when you leave God, you made up your mind that you don't want to be bothered with spiritual things, but what you don't realize is God gives that permission, and your latter end is worse than your beginning. I don't think you're going to have the luxury and benefit of doing your own thing without slapping God in the face and paying for it. So if you don't want to work with him, he's going to give you the nature that you had before. Yeah. And we already know that Saul struggled in these kinds of areas because he's already hard-headed. Yeah. So this is not hard. It's just like you mentioned about Pharaoh. That was a nature that Pharaoh possessed.
Yeah, the thing is, that's a good point, is that you will be left to your own devices, right? And Satan is waiting. It's hard, again, for us to conceptualize this, but even if you see evil in the world, right? Like if you think of the United States slave trade or the Holocaust, as evil as those things were, it could always be way worse. Don't ever say it's like, oh man, what more could happen? A whole lot more can happen, right? Chernobyl happened and nuclear waste will burn in that part of the world for 1,000 years. It could have been way worse, right? USSR had those facilities all over Russia. What if all of them exploded at the same time? Things always can be worse. You could have no money in your pocket. Oh, what could be worse? Way worse. You could have cancer too, right? Wasn't that Job's point? Job was like, man, I lost everything, but at least my health is good. Then what? Oh, now I got boils from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet. These boils, what am I going to do? Like, things can always be worse, right? So when we understand that, not to minimize suffering, but it could always be worse if God didn't say to the waves, you stop here, right? This is where waves are going to stop, and then the rest of the land, or the waves would just keep coming, right? Don't we see that with tsunami? Waves not going to say, hey, we're going too far. This is as far as we're supposed to go. No, once they're allowed to go further, where do they go? Further to where people are. Only God keeps those things as a balance. When he removes his presence from certain things for whatever reason, calamity and destruction will come, right? That's just the sad nature of where we live, right? In terms of earth, not physically in the United States. Just where we live, because God is not walking and talking and controlling this environment in the same manner in which heaven is controlled. Sin entered and sin infected everything like a virus. Every living thing is a byproduct in 2019 of sin that happened at the Garden of Eden, right? In the spiritual realm, angels have free will too. It's just that their interaction with God in terms of what we understand salvation to be is not the same. They're already on the spiritual realm, not flesh and blood, and they're already in God's presence. There is no back and forth, and they're not made in God's image. That's the blessing that you have. You have back and forth. You could play tennis with God. You could 2018 not come to church, 2019 come to church, 2020 not come to church. And as long as you have breath in your lungs and Jesus didn't come back, you have a chance to come back. Angels don't have that luxury. Now you can see a little differently maybe why demons and Satan hate you so much. Because they feel like you're playing. Right? Maybe demons feel like y'all playing around. You played today. You're just pretending to go to church. You're not here. You somewhere else. I don't have luxury. Maybe a demon say, I already recognize what I did was wrong. I don't have luxury to take Lord's Supper. You take Lord's Supper and almost magic, something come over you, you start feeling bad about yourself. Satan and his demons don't have that luxury because God let them have a choice. And God said, you picked your choice. Even though you didn't know fully what would happen from your choice, you decided. You said you wanted to be God over your own life, right? So go ahead, be God over your own life. And I'm going to even make you a place where I'm not going to be and just you will be. Then you can rule that place. Then people understanding when they see the whole picture, just like a child say, what? No, I didn't mean it that way. But with God in the spiritual realm, that level of salvation, mercy, and grace is not there, right? So therefore, as an angel, once I decide that, hey, this isn't for me anymore, that is a clear distinction between what choice I have. See, angels don't struggle with that because it's either on God's team or Satan's team. Our problem, though, in the world, the devil's best concept is he wants to remove himself from people's understanding. Therefore, he just wants you to do what you want to do, realizing you're the God in your own life without physically and spiritually understanding that. Because the last time he did something like that, he's seen where he ended up. That's why he's very successful here in this realm, because he just wants you to believe constantly, did someone tell you you can't do this? And once he keeps asking men and women that of every generation, people start deciding for themselves, I don't want to do the right thing, because who said what's right and what's wrong? And therefore, now you're going down the same path as Satan, but visually it appears different, right? That's when we sing the song Farther Along. People are living their life. The song said, never molested though in the wrong. Meaning people do wrong each and every day, and the sun and blessings still shine on them, so they feel like, what? Maybe I'm doing the right thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm living the right way. That's how some people feel. Maybe this was the right thing. And they keep going down that pathway because visually they don't see anything changing, right? That's the struggle that we have as humanity, whereas in a spiritual realm, you see a visual change, right? Visually, angels are able to see the difference between angels and demons and God and Satan. What that means, I don't know what that means, right? But visually, if I can see and remember what Satan used to look like and now, that would help me as Ellis to say, hey, man, I'm staying on God's team because y'all look wild crazy. We look nice. Y'all look crazy. But see, visually, we don't see. Now, someone can indulge in sin, sex, drugs, alcohol, and after some years, you see the body decay. But just because someone sinned, two of us right here, I sinned and you didn't, visually you don't see any difference. So you say, okay, let me drink some too. That was the whole point with Adam and Eve. I didn't see anything visually when she bit the fruit, so let me take a bite too. So those are some things, if we do admit, are disadvantages for us, right? But the blessing is you have salvation, grace, and mercy. So it's a balance, right? But there are things that are different between your interaction with free will as a human being and the interaction with free will as a spiritual person. There's a big difference. And again, when Jesus came down on earth and took the appearance of a man, not of an angel, think about that from Satan's point of view, right? Then you walked and talked like them. Then you allowed them to put your hands on you. He may say, what? I never was trying to put my hands on you. I just wanted to be more important. You let them touch you, spit on you, kill you, and you still love them. But us, we just made one mistake. See how easily people can rationalize? And what would you start doing in terms of hate? You would redirect that hate off of God and put it towards who? The people he loved, right? Human beings. You would say you were the problem. Everything was fine before he decided to make you. We were all happy wherever we were. Then all of a sudden he made y'all. Look how bad y'all are. See, we never like to look at things from that point of view in the whole story because it makes us uncomfortable and it sounds like almost cartoonish maybe or like a movie. But just think of it from the balance, right? Don't you see in your Bible where it talks about nature groaning? Imagine nature, right? Human beings are a virus to this planet. right? Imagine nature saying, how come y'all can't do things in moderation? You come one place and you just keep doing and doing. Farmers will touch this piece of land and keep tilling and tilling and tilling and tilling till the land dies. Aren't y'all made in God's image? How come you couldn't go over there the next season? Nope. Gotta keep doing, destroy. You go into somebody's life and keep taking, destroy. Then you go to the next person's life. Take, destroy. That's a virus. That's what a virus does. Virus go and get you sick and it gets you sick. And once it can't get any nutrients out of you, it's gonna go to Sister Tammy. Not gonna stay with you. You dead to them already. See what I'm saying? So in terms of how life is working, spiritual and physical, look at this constant conflict in humanity's actions and free will is almost front and center. That's why I'm saying these things impact the spiritual realm too. It doesn't only impact the physical realm. Okay, anything else more on that? That was a good question. Okay, question 11. How did David establish a relationship with Saul? This is kind of weird, not because of anything from David, but just because we know the whole story here. But what happened here? Saul is distressed, and what does somebody think of as a solution? Somebody comes up with a solution.
Music calms the beast.
Okay, so they're like, hey, you need to hear a song. Right now, we don't have Spotify or Apple Music where you could just put on your playlist, right? So now we need a song, and then somebody remembered a person. This person checked all boxes, right? Because it said, hey, there was a Bethlehemite, this guy who's the son of Jesse, and he was what? What was the description of Jesse, verse 18? Skillful at playing, so he was a musician. What else?
He's brave.
He's a fighter, he's a man of war, he's a soldier, he's an orator, he's a good speaker, and he's handsome. Okay, so, and the Lord is with him. Okay, so let's just speak, ladies, you can have your own study. Let's speak from a guy's point of view. Guys be happy with one of these boxes, right? Guys overcompensate because they know that they're not the best in these categories. Therefore, they pretend. Guys do more pretending than women, right? They pretend like these things. This guy is clicking on all cylinders, right? If you were comparing yourself to David, you either love David or hate David because he have all the boxes checked off, right? Like he is what people consider is like, oh, he's perfect. So when somebody thought of him, when you mention all these boxes, the next verse obviously is Saul will send a message to Jesse and say, send me your son David, right? I mean, I want to meet this guy checking all the boxes. So David came and stood before him, verse 21, and Saul loved him greatly and he became his armor bearer. Then Saul sent to Jesse and said, please let David stand before me, for he has found favor in my sight. And it was that whenever the Spirit from God was upon Saul, that David would take a harp and play it with his hand. Then Saul would become refreshed and well, and the distressing spirit will depart from him. Okay, why did I say this is weird, though? Knowing the whole Bible story, this is strange. Why? Saul loved him, and who is David in the future, right? If these two are looking for the same position at a job, who is David? David is his replacement. So it's very weird to train your replacement. Jobs do that though all the time. Jobs will bring somebody in and say, hey, can you train them? You thinking, oh, you like them, you friends with them, and then 3 months your manager bring the office and say, what? Hey, we let you go, sorry. And then you find out from your friends who still work there, hey, Ellis took your job. He's sitting in your chair, right? So this is very strange when we look at it from outside. And this also goes into you have to watch how you interact with life because you only know the today. You don't know the tomorrow. That's why God tried to humble us every single day saying the actions that you're doing today are going to impact your Monday, but you say, no, I want to do it anyway. So go ahead and love him. And then what? Now he's going to replace you. You still love him? Once he found out he replacing him in the future, does Saul love him anymore? Love turns to what? Hate, because old people have been saying, what? This is thin line. I always say is hate is just love redirected. That's all that is. You hate somebody intensely, you love them. Sorry. People that I don't care about, I don't hate them. I don't care about them. I don't remember you. I don't even remember to forget you. People in my life that came and went, I don't care about them. Maybe they're obsessed with me, not me. But the people that I feel some way about in any human interaction, you love that person. Because if you didn't love them, what does it matter to you? Right? That's why I said Satan loved God. So that's why he hates you. He's not going to admit that. That's how people in relationships, when they go bad, they act petty. You know why? They love them. Because if you didn't love somebody, do you care? Care comes from what? Having feelings for something. I don't care about beets. I hate beets. I couldn't care less about beets. I could be starving. It's a plate full of beets. You know what I said? Well, I guess I'll be seeing Jesus tonight. I'm not eating that. But if you put lobster or steak there, I love that. I care about that. The doctor say don't eat it. I say, well, guess I'm going to go see Jesus because I like that. I'm going to keep eating it. Right? These are things that tie us together in terms of emotion. So it's very ironic that he ends up interacting with David and loves him. And for some of the same things he loves about David as a armor bearer, he's going to hate about him once he realizes God chose him, even though he already knew what? God, it already says God was with him. Why do you be surprised if God chose him when Samuel already told you God is not with you? So that's interesting. Yes, very good.
It's very fascinating to me to what extent God will go to make provisions for his work and his will and what he wants to be done. I'm looking at a few guys, since we're in the Old Testament, looking at Boaz, how he could have had plenty wives, but yet he waited for that one woman to come by, which is God's will. Looking at Moses, we look at this story here with David and Saul. It's almost parallel, right? Moses was a prince in Pharaoh's kingdom and everything. And he goes from that situation in the palace to being an outcast to God calling him back to free these people and doing such great work for God. And we're looking at Samuel, who's pretty relevant to this story, where how did he come about, right? Hannah was weeping bitterly because she was in so much anguish about not having a son that she made a vow to God to say, hey, if you give me a son, I will dedicate his life to do your work and do your will. That's how Samuel came about. And now David, in his situation where he's going to go underneath his arch enemy, like the guy who hates him so much and wants him dead. But very early on, God is using Saul to prepare David to show David the ropes and how to lead a people and how to get everything that he needs physically to understand how it means to lead. Even though Saul didn't have much to offer, but through that experience, through that relationship with Saul, David's going to learn a lot of things in order to know how to lead. So I'm going to relate that back, all of these situations back to us here. It is so many lessons that we can learn. But what I gather from it is that God's will and God's plan and his work will move forward no matter what. It's going to move forward with you or without you. It'd be nice if you could be a part of it, but if you don't want to, he's going to overstep you and make provisions once again for the work to continue. And then two, God will put you through some tough and troubling times, right, in order to prepare you for what's next and what he wants you to do in his kingdom, for his work. So when we're going through these trials and tribulations, when things are not going well in our lives, before we start, asking God, please forgive me, please do this, please help me, please help. Like be like Paul, who in Philippians 4:13, who says, I'm going to give God the glory, whether I have or I not have, whether I'm in pain, whether I'm happy, whatever circumstance it is, I'm going to give God the glory. And I just want to relate that back to us today, because God will take you through some very hard times in order to prepare you. Because if you're not prepared through God's word, how are you going to withstand all of the horrible things that's going to happen to you in the future? You have to go through some things in order to be ready for that work.
Yeah, this concept really, this comment, sums up this whole concept of the lesson, the bottom left. of your page on page 11 is faith following God's plan, right? We don't have time to dive into that, but conceptually, don't spend a lot of time on the, oh, woe is me phase of your life. That may just be a day, a month, a year. You may live to be 100. What is it if you have a bad 5 years out of 100 years? See? Like, how do you know today is the 30th, tomorrow's the 1st, right? 6 months of this year is gone. Let's say this is the worst year of your life so far. How do you know? Is the year over yet? What if the next 6 months make 2019 as a balance the best year of your life? How do you know? Anybody been to December 31st, 2019 yet? Nobody been there yet, right? How do you know what you're gonna be, what you're gonna do? You don't even know what you're gonna eat later today. You could get home. Let's say you got something already prepared. For whatever reason, it may be burnt. How do you know? You don't even know what you're going to do in a couple of minutes from now. Oh, I'm going to worship. In what way? Do you know? Because other people got to leave you. What if some brother coming here sick? Now we got to reroute how we do worship. My point is, you don't have any control. That's why Jesus said you don't even know how many hairs on the top of your head, even though you brush and comb them every day. Why don't you just follow God's plan? Because you don't know. It could always be worse. Even though God left Saul, he still put David in Saul's presence and didn't leave Saul in a form of constant depression, because that would have broke the nation. So he allowed Saul to do whatever he wanted to do in free will and still bless the rest of the people through Saul's foolishness. That's the divine nature of God. That's why I said it could always be worse. You think God in heaven don't see men and women coming up with schemes that's going to ruin this planet? Yeah. And he allowed them to have free will if he wants to. And in certain times, you're going to say, what? That's enough. Because if he didn't do that, people will devour this entire planet until it don't exist anymore. But you follow God's plan. That goes from outside that you can't control, but also your life. Live your life according to God's plan. Jesus said what? If you can seek righteousness and all these spiritual things, the rest of your life would already be taken care of. But when you obsess over physical things that are fleeting and not spiritual things that are everlasting, you are going outside of your design, because I didn't make you to operate that way. And that's what we have to understand in terms of God's plan. And following God's plan is, it is a plan for your design. It's not a cookie cut plan that fits everyone, right? God has a plan for your life. But if you don't trust him and you operate outside of that plan, when we study Bible scriptures, we can see Saul, we can see Samson. What could their life have been? I don't know. But God allowed them to choose, right? Saul made a different choice than David. What would David's life have been if he didn't choose to be in a situation with Bathsheba? I don't know, but God said what? Because you made this choice, now I'm going to tell you all the things that's going to happen as a result of that. But you made that choice. I gave you everything in the whole world to have, but you just wanted this guy's one little lamb. Why? Why? See, when we look at things from that point of view, I said earlier, that makes people uncomfortable because it puts the burden on me. But when you take Lord's Supper, that's what you should be thinking about. Think about how much of a horrible person you are. Some of us sitting here think we too good. Everyone in here this morning is a horrible, rotten, sinful person. Every one of them. And me. Oh, no, I don't feel that way. Okay. Right? Once you start feeling better about yourself, you start thinking, I'm not really that bad. Once you're not that bad, I don't really sin that much. Once you don't sin that much, I don't really need a savior. I don't need to go to church. And then you're gone. Just like that. Oh, I still believe. Yeah, I still believe God is God. I just don't believe I'm that bad to have to go all the time. Y'all bad. You keep going. I'm going to stay home. See, once we start removing ourselves from God's design, we become the God in our own life and start doing things that are contrary to God's will. Okay, we're over time. Next week, we may spend a couple of minutes just on that, just as a recap. But next week we'll be moving into lesson 6, which is David and Goliath. The concept for that is faith, knowing God is on the side of the faithful. So it's a blessed story. We'll look at that. Let's go to God in prayer, and then we'll transition into worship. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful and blessed day. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to study a portion of your word. We ask, Heavenly Father, that we will have the type of faith that will follow your plan in our life. We pray that we can do this individually in our families, as a local congregation here, and throughout the whole world, that we are able to impact. We pray, dear God, that you be with us as we transition into worship service, that all things be done according to your will, and that we will be able to present worship service to you with sweet smelling aroma to thy throne. God, guard and keep us in all things. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, thank you for all of our Bible readers and those who had comments.